Hi, and welcome to another session of Florida's Great Northwest. I'm your host, Larry Sassano. I'm the president of Florida's Great Northwest, a regional economic development organization, and my special guest today is Ed Gardner, who is the Northwest Florida Economic Development Marketing Representative for PowerSouth and the current chairman of Florida's Great Northwest. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Larry.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You know, we're going to talk about a lot of our marketing efforts, particularly 2013 that we completed, and what we're planning to do with Ed's leadership in 2014. We, of course, as you probably know, are a regional marketing organization, and we basically look out to recruit as many targeted industries that we can to the Northwest Florida area, the 16 county area. And we have the support of all of our economic development organizations throughout this region. And so we're looking for a good, prosperous year for 2014. Ed, let's talk a little bit about your role with PowerSouth. You know, you cover a pretty broad area too,
right,
in Northwest Florida. But what are your main functions in that role?
My responsibility, first of all, PowerSouth Energy, a lot of people don't know who that is. But PowerSouth Energy is actually an electric cooperative, GNT, which is Generation and Transmission Cooperative. A lot of people in this region probably have not heard of PowerSouth, but they have heard of our cooperatives that we serve, which are Escambia River Electric Cooperative over in Escambia or Santa Rosa counties, Chelco, of course, a lot of people know Chelco in this area, and then Gulf Coast Electric Cooperative and West Florida Electric Cooperative. Those are our Florida cooperatives. And then we also serve 16 in Alabama, but I'm only responsible for economic development on behalf of those Florida electric cooperatives, and so it is a large territory. So
your main role is, as mine is to market your cooperatives for economic growth so they sustain more power.
Absolutely. Our philosophy is to create jobs throughout our service territory. It improves our members' incomes and improves our members' quality of life. And so that's what we do. We have 10 counties in Northwest Florida that we serve, from the Apalachicola River all the way to the Florida-Alabama line in Escambia County.
You know, it's interesting in knowing you know, some of your leadership, like Horace and Seth, that you know your philosophy is really an open policy in terms of, even if and you'll say better than I can, but even if you're working on a project that may not be in your service area, you're still going to work that project and support it.
Absolutely. There are a lot of the projects that we work that are not in our service territory. We may never serve them. But our philosophy is we work with our partners, which is Gulf Power, Florida's Great Northwest, our local economic development organizations, and even some of our private businesses. And what's good for one area of our 10-county footprint is good for everyone. You know, we may not serve a project directly, but our members will work at that project, and so we benefit and our members benefit, and if that's the case, then that's where we'll focus our efforts.
That's wonderful. You know, I tell you, that's kind of our philosophy, you know, in terms of, as you know, as our chairman, that we try to market the region and be neutral for the counties until that prospect determines where they want to lay their footprint and make a decision. Well, let's talk about some of our travels now. This has been a busy year for you, yes, and for Florida's Great Northwest as well. Let's see, what's a good one to start with? How about Paris Air Show?
Yeah, there's
a good show.
Paris, and as you know, we focus a lot on aerospace aviation because that is something that we've been doing in Northwest Florida for a long time. And we feel like there are a lot of opportunities going forward, particularly in the commercial side. Right. And so we did Paris this summer. That was a great show. We had a number of appointments, and of course that's that's the largest show for the year. Yeah. And so we were able to meet with a lot of CEOs of the major aerospace companies and tell them about Northwest Florida.
Yeah. You know what I appreciate about the way you market, and I'll say this to the audience, is that when you grab onto a lead, you don't let go of it, and you know, you follow through very swiftly and comprehensively, and you know, as an economic developer, that's what you have to do to be successful because of the competition that's
I was
out
going to
there.
say, this is incredibly competitive sport, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But and there's no shortage of communities going after projects, and so we have to do that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting how because of of your relationship with Alabama, and we know that other states are pursuing some of the projects that we're pursuing, and we have to try to be a step ahead of them, and that means making sure we have the cooperation of all of our economic developers in putting together the right proposals that are very thorough, so that the client will look at us and say, hey, you know, they've got some great assets there we need to look at. And
You're right.
you know, the final say-so is them coming here for a site tour.
Yeah, we can't just be as good as our competition. We have to be better.
Yeah.
And we have to be better organized, and we have to do what we say we're going to do. And I think we're doing that. I think we're starting to make progress.
Let's talk about a project, for example, any project, but let's say we do focus on aerospace and aviation and defense in this region, but you mentioned something about commercial. Can you kind of exaggerate on how important the commercial aviation aerospace industry is in our near future here and around the world, for that matter?
Absolutely. You know, after 9/11, a lot of airlines were not purchasing airplanes, and so they've delayed a lot of their purchases. Well, now there's a lot of those airplanes have gotten old, and so they need to purchase new airplanes, and air travel continues to grow. And we had great news a little over a year ago, 2 years ago, where Airbus announced that they'll be assembling the A320 in Mobile just across the state line. And the growth of commercial aviation is tremendous over the next 20 years. And we're very well positioned with Airbus to our west, with Embraer down in Melbourne and also in Jacksonville, with Gulfstream and Savannah, and Boeing now with the Dreamliner up in Charleston. We're very well positioned to take advantage of a lot of those supplier activities, which are going to start migrating to this area to supply all of those new OEMs.
Well, let's talk about that now, because that's the regional equipment manufacturers, as you mentioned, the Airbus, the Boeing, the Embraer. They rely on those suppliers to provide them with the parts in a timely manner, and a lot of those suppliers, particularly for Airbus, are not in the U.S. And of course, we're focusing on that, but because we're 16 counties from basically Leon County or Jefferson County all the way over to Pensacola, and a lot of those OEMs are on the East Coast, that becomes part of our marketing region as well. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a long history of the military here. Everyone knows that. And but over the last decade or more, a lot of our suppliers have begun to get more into commercial. And so when we talk about recruitment, that's just one piece of it. As you know, the other piece is getting more business for our existing suppliers in the commercial. And that's a huge part of what you and I do, is trying to build up that business. But a lot of the suppliers, especially when you get past the tier one, the large, super large suppliers, are not here yet in North America. And not just the Airbus project, but a lot of those guys are still serving the Dreamliner and Boeing out of Europe. But with Airbus being here now as well, then that might be that critical mass that allows them to make a decision to invest here.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when you and I have talked to a lot of these suppliers. Let's take Toulouse as an example. Toulouse, France, which one of our marketing trips, and you happened on to a project that we won't name the name of the project, but it was a project that was aerospace related, small company.
Right.
How are you pursuing that interest of that company, which is a European, basically, company?
Right, and you were there as well, so actually it was us that stumbled on the project. But we're working together to pursue this. But you make a good point. We were there at the conference, and there were probably 5 other states there as well. And there was a small company that was looking to expand into North America, and they saw that as a good opportunity to meet with different states to get proposals. And we were one of those, and we had a great meeting. And after we came back, you and I pursued that project, and we sent out the RFP, request for proposal, and we got 4 back from our local communities. We also worked with the state of Florida as well on this project, and it resulted in a visit. At the next aviation conference in December, we were able to go visit this company, make our presentations, and what we're now pursuing is hopefully site visits coming up in the spring, and they'll look at us and several other states and communities. But it's a good example of why we market overseas and really throughout the world in North America. You have to be there for a number of these projects to see you.
Yeah, you know, traditionally economic development has been about, you go to a trade show, you sit in a booth, And companies come by and you introduce yourself and they'll say, well, why are you here? Well, we're trying to recruit companies like you to our area. That's still part of marketing for economic development, but what do you see as has changed using the Speed News as an example?
Correct.
Okay.
Trade shows, as you said, are still an important component of what we do. But that's only one component, because trade shows, a lot of these companies are there to sell to each other. And so while we can get an audience there, there are a lot of conferences where a lot of the professionals in the aerospace industry attend on more of an educational level. Right. And that's also a great opportunity for us to meet those companies. And a lot of it is consistency and getting your name out consistently. You can't just go to one conference or one show one year and then sit back and expect the phone to ring. You have to build relationships, and that's what is important in this business.
I've noticed that I said Speed News, and for the audience, that is a kind of a forum, as Ed's suggesting, is where a lot of these CEOs and decision makers from these major companies, in this case aerospace and aviation, meet. And then there's breaks, and of course Florida's Great Northwest, PowerSouth have sponsored some of these breaks, and it gives us an opportunity to approach and meet some of these decision makers on a one-to-one basis. Absolutely. Which is very difficult. If you were trying to get into their office to meet with them, you probably wouldn't be able to do it as easily.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And this is a good opportunity because it is a more casual setting. And it's less about making appointments like you might try to do at a trade show. And as you said, it's more about really interacting with them during the breaks. Usually you have a dinner where you can sit with them individually and really just have a discussion and conversation with them. And it's less about a hard sell, and it's more about building a relationship with these executives. And most of them attend these conferences the same every year. Yeah. And so it's important to continue to do that.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you have identified how important these conferences are domestically and internationally. We're going to do a few of them this year with our EDOs, and I want to talk about a recent trip that you and I took over to the Innovation Park in Tallahassee, and meeting with some of those physicists there, and wow, that was pretty impressive. But they had been working on so many components that are related to aerospace, so we didn't grasp that until we actually had that tour. They had the wind tunnel, and they're working with Lockheed and Boeing and others. And how does that open up possibilities for us to introduce some of the companies we're working with to that type of research capability that they have there?
Yeah, that's a tremendous opportunity, because one of the best opportunities for us really is probably in the aerostructures area when you're talking about aircraft assembly. And with the Jet Propulsion Lab there, the High Performance Materials Institute, that's a tremendous asset in this region that these companies can take advantage of. It's a whole lot cheaper for them to rent space in the Jet Propulsion Lab or work with HPMI than it is to purchase their own $7 million wind tunnel. Yeah. And so it also shows them our commitment to aerospace, and it shows them our expertise in aerospace, which is what we think makes us stand out across the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, and I want to spend a little time talking about the labor market here that is so important to that industry. And when we're going to companies that are outside of the U.S. or even around the rest of the country, we have to make them aware of the technical skills that are available in this region. How do you feel we're doing in terms of doing that successfully?
I think we're doing a good job, and I think it's consistency. Once again, it helps that recently we were named the #1 state for aviation manufacturing by, I believe it was Price Waterhouse in the last few weeks. And those are the types of accolades that I think are getting that word out. But our existing suppliers are really where we can push that. And as you know, they go with us on a lot of these conferences and shows, and they can tell our story better than anyone.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we do. That's one part of our marketing, is to leverage our existing suppliers. And because a lot of times, we're like the project you mentioned in Toulouse, one of their critical things that they need is machining and aerospace machining capacity, and we certainly have that in this region.
But I'll tell you, When you go to one of these conferences and you've got 150 decision makers from major companies like Boeing and Embraer and Airbus, and you're able to make contact with them and then hear some of the presentations being made by them, it really gives you a better focus of understanding that industry from another level.
Right.
You know, we understand it from economic development, and we want to recruit this company, but they tell us how appropriate it is to work with all those suppliers as well, and work with them because that's what they rely on. So if we can get some of those suppliers, the first one here, the second one,
that's it.
You know, it starts building, and you know, I've heard discussions from the Hamburg trip that it was made known that from some of those major suppliers that it would take 3 to 5 years before any of these suppliers would make a decision to be in this region.
Right.
And is that a bad thing?
No, and I think also in understanding, I think some of the presentations in Hamburg, there are different opinions on that, and I think for the bulk of the projects that's probably accurate. But as you know, there are several projects that we're working right now that are going to be ahead of that curve. But the other point to that, I believe, is that once those decisions are ready to be made, it's too late to build relationships. You've got to start building those relationships ahead of time so that when they do come to the point where they have to make a decision and they have a project, they have to think of Northwest Florida. And if we wait until the 3 to 5 years, then we're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities.
That's an excellent point. You know, it's upfront marketing that is really going to be the winners in this game, and I think that's what we're trying to explain to our leadership and to the public, that you've got to do it now, because by the time they've made a decision, it's too late.
And these projects usually, a lot of times, take 2 years, even to the point of, so even if they're coming in 3 to 5 years, well, if that's the case, if you look at the 3-year end, then likely within 12 months they'll start that process. And so we're not at all early. So I think that's important for people to understand, is that even though 3 to 5 years may sound like a long time away, it's not in economic development terms.
No.
It's on us.
No, and let's talk about the labor we've got a great labor market here, and that's also being recognized in a lot of these major trade publications. That is probably one of the greatest assets we have in terms of marketing Northwest Florida, from Tallahassee to Pensacola, because of the military makeup and because of the technical research taking place, or colleges or universities. They play a major role, and I think part of what Florida's Great Northwest needs to continue to do is to make our colleges, universities aware of how important they are to these companies, and having that training program made available to them as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we were at Paris last year, we met with the CEO of a very large global aerospace company. And the main purpose of that meeting was to talk about the resources that we have from a research standpoint in the region. And they were very interested in what we had to say about Florida State, and also the rest of the research facilities throughout our region.
Yeah. Well, we're excited about the opportunities, I think, that lie ahead of us. And let's talk about what your goals are for 2014 for Florida's Great Northwest. I know you've got some priorities there that you'd like us to try to accomplish. What would be some of your top areas of support that we need to offer this year?
I think to continue to do what we were doing in 2013, which is to work with our partners to market Northwest Florida. We work very closely, as you know, with the state of Florida. I think that maybe that hasn't been done in the past, and I think that's making an impact. We have a very good relationship. There are times they actually go with us on trade shows, and we go with them sometimes. So I think that's incredibly important to continue that. And I think continue the relationships that we're building, and also these projects that we are finding, we've got to focus on those and work them very hard with our local economic developers. So I think marketing at the regional level with our partners, and continue to focus where we have been focusing, which I think is aerospace, and then look at other opportunities as well.
Some of the other opportunities, perhaps, we talked about logistics, which is important to all industry sectors, not only aerospace, but for construction industry, for manufacturing in general. And we don't talk about manufacturing a lot, but that is one of our main focuses is advanced manufacturing. And we've got some plans to look into how we can capitalize on that with some of the upcoming shows this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at some other shows that are more general manufacturing. Manufacturing, although it's hasn't grown tremendously in the United States, what we do have is becoming more and more technical, high capital investment, and very high wage jobs. And so it's an area, the Southeast is going to continue to be a growth area for manufacturing, and we can take part of that since we're in the northern part of Florida.
Yeah. And we've got a good base here, particularly in Okaloosa County, Bay County, Escambia County, and those pockets of areas such as Jackson County, Washington County, have pockets of manufacturing that are unique, and I'm often asked, and I'm sure you are as well, from some of our members, well, how do you promote the whole region so different? And they say, well, how do you handle a project? And I'll tell them, well, when a project comes to Great Northwest, the company may say, we want to focus on these particular counties, but we need suppliers, and we need to look at suppliers throughout the 16-county area. So that could bring in consideration for those existing companies for a project that's looking to locate somewhere in our region.
Yeah, you're right. So there are two pieces to it. There's one, when we do get a project, we try to encourage, as you do, as many counties as possible to get an opportunity to submit on those if they can meet the minimum criteria. But the other piece of that, even if some of our more rural areas don't have an opportunity to compete for that project, as you said, if we get some of these projects, then there are going to be opportunities for suppliers throughout the region. And that's why it's important to market the entire region and these opportunities and it's important for these others to be prepared from a workforce training standpoint and from a product standpoint as well.
We've got just a few minutes left, and believe it or not, this goes pretty fast.
It does.
But I do want to thank you, before I forget, for being able to make yourself available when I'm calling on different companies and membership throughout the region. It's so important to have you as the chairperson of the Great Northwest available to them, and it does mean a lot and helps me too.
Well, Florida's Great Northwest is incredibly important to our region. We've got to continue marketing as a region. It's important. We've been branding it now for, I believe, 12 or 13 years, and I think it's making an impact. And with the staff of two, you and Teresa do a tremendous job. I don't think everyone knows that, but you're only two of you. So we're part of that team, and look forward to continuing working with you.
Well, Teresa's actually, I think she's three people.
You're right.
She works like three people. I'm not sure who I'm always talking to when I talk to her, because she's either the bookkeeper or she's doing the marketing setup or she's setting up shows for us or whatever. I do want to cover one other aspect that we didn't touch upon, and that is some of the direct mail that we do, and we do that on a monthly basis. It's so important, and we've got about 300 consultants, site consultants that we send that out to, plus several companies. We're going to continue that this year. That really, we know from the feedback that we get from these consultants that those direct mail pieces are read. And it tells about the companies in our backyards and different marketing strategies that we're developing around those companies as well.
Yeah, and that's very strategic, as you know. Have been doing an aerospace strategy for the last 7 or 8 months as well. That's very focused, going out to all of the aerospace executives throughout the world. And that's starting to make an impact, as you ran across that at a recent trade show.
Absolutely.
But we always are told when we go to meetings with consultants that that's the one thing that they remember about Florida's Great Northwest, are those postcards.
Yeah, at a recent show, the NBA show, National Business Aviation Association, Teresa and I were making a call on one of the companies that we send these direct mail pieces to. And he said, hey, I just received your last direct mail piece. He says, I read it. So we know they're reading them.
Absolutely.
And so we know it's important to them. And we also encourage our EDOs to send us information about any announcements so that we can send that out to the region as well. That becomes very important. So it has become a tool. We were asked recently, what about trade publications, advertising? And we've kind of backed off of that. And our explanation is that we don't see them as valuable.
Yeah, it's, in my experience, you just don't get a lot of leads from those publications. So, we're continuing to evaluate that because the business changes all the time.
But the direct mail piece, and of course, on top of that, are hitting those forums, those trade shows, those conferences that we can do the one-on-one, has become the most valuable tool that we have to market. And we don't want to let the secret out that is a trend that we see taking place in the growth of economic development, but also very important for this region. So any last minute thoughts about the year 2014, how it will compare, you think, for growth in terms of 2013?
I think it's exciting. I think a lot of positive indicators. I think the next 2 years, I think will be a lot of opportunities in this region. And I think it's a great place to be. I think a lot of the growth engine, I think, is going to be along the Gulf Coast. And I think Northwest Florida, with the state making a lot of headway when it comes to a strong budget and fiscally at the state level, that's going to make an impact as well. So very optimistic, I think, for the next 2 years for this region.
We're thankful for our partners. We're thankful for PowerSouth and making you the person that is running the economic development for them. And we thank all our partners for their participation and support of what we do. And we feel, in the end, we're going to generate some good additional high-paying jobs and companies for this area.
Thank you, Larry.
So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that at Gardner, PowerSouth, and also the chairman for Florida's Great Northwest this year. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show, and tune in again next time. Thank you.